Give it 2 more minutes. Alrighty, so we're 5 after. We shall get started here. Um, so thank you everyone for joining me on the call today and joining Leslie and I on the call today. She's being mute right now, and I will explain why. So over the past 7, 8 weeks, so 2 months now, we've been doing these webinars, and as of recently, we were asked to turn these webinars into a podcast. And so therefore you will have access to these discussions at your leisure in the future. So with that being said, to make it a lot easier on me when I'm editing these podcasts at the end, is that we definitely use the chat to ask your questions in a numerical order. So obviously the first person out of the question, put your number 1 in there, ask your question. Leslie will, call on you at that point in time, and then you could unmute your mic and then ask the question at that. If you do have background noise in the back, please try to keep it to a minimum as well, because again, it's kind of hard to go back in here and edit all this stuff out of here on the back end. But with that being said, that's the only rules that we have here. We want this to be definitely an open discussion, and it's really exciting. I don't know, for me at least, it's really exciting that not only that not only is this getting more exposure, these discussions that we're having, but I think they need to have that exposure and get exposed to more to a wide array of audience that can't make it here at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday. So again, thank you for your participation in there. And Leslie, please do not cough on the mic. No, I'm just joking. I'm just messing with you. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to her and we'll start the discussion as well. And again, thank you everybody for joining.
Hi, everyone. And as always, I appreciate you joining. Tonight's topic, leadership, power, pause, and privilege. So here are the few questions that I asked when we sent out the invite in regards to the topic. Does leadership give you license to say what you feel? Is power privilege or privilege power? Do we expect more from leadership than we can give? Now, granted, I would be amiss if I didn't speak about what's happening in the news today, because I think it all comes back from leadership, clearly. But obviously, there's a lot of racial tension going on, bias tension going on. Folks are just tired. So with that said, and we're going to have that conversation next week where I really want to dive into bias and racism and racist and what we can all do to continue to be aware and to make change. But tonight we're going to turn it into exactly where we started on leadership. What role does leadership play in this? How much responsibility do they have? Because this started from a conversation, a phone call that said, I need you to call the president and tell him to stop. Now, I don't have that power to call the president and tell him to stop, but they were so upset on the way that he treated the female reporter. And then even she took her mask off and said, are you speaking to me like that? Why was that directed at me? And so leadership starts from the head. You know, I always say the fish stinks from the head. It starts from the head and it goes down. And so I really want to have this conversation. And as always, I welcome you to jump in immediately, because have we gotten so far of privilege that that's what power is, or is power privilege? When I started doing tons of research, you know, there was a couple companies that came to mind that I thought, wow, this leadership has really taken the reins in this time. Kruger. I don't have a Kruger supermarket. I've never been in one. I don't know what it's like to internally work inside, but what I do know is the report that I saw on the news the other day with the CEO saying, we have the funds. So I've installed ultraviolet lights, testing for all my employees. They're not paying for it. Like, he went through a whole list and he goes, and I've called Europe and I've now written a manual. And any company that wants the manual, regardless of size, I'm happy to give it to them, because we're only all going to do this if we all try to follow some of the same steps. And since I have the money, I'm happy to go ahead and do it for everyone to make sure my employees are good, my customers are good, and we all are good. So I was like, wow, okay, I'm impressed. And they gave him some hard questions in the morning show, but he stood right there and he took them. We're not perfect. Yes, we've had illness. This is how we've dealt with it. On the flip side of this, you know, I posted about Zoom and the fire, not Zoom itself. So let me say the firing that took place on Zoom from WW, aka Weight Watchers. Here's how I think. I see this article and I go, that wasn't a one-person decision. Somebody came up with the bright idea that we don't have time to speak to everyone. We don't want to speak to everybody. Pull them on a Zoom call and we're just going to do a mass firing. Good luck, goodbye, and see you. Maybe it's just me. But here's where my issue is as well. No one within that room that was in making that, we're going to fire everyone by Zoom, not one person said, excuse me, I don't know if this is the best idea. Where was the legal team at that point? Where was someone to say, we should probably call, even if it takes a while, let's split up the list. We can send a letter or email. We can do a Zoom call to say, we're sorry we had to do this after everyone's been contacted. Something, if they were so inclined to use Zoom. But to have a mass firing? So I see, are we collapsing leadership with title or authority? Nancy, that is a great thought. Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, I think this is a debate that we often get in leadership circles, right? Is I personally coach people to lead from wherever they are, right? Because I think we can all do something, and that also empowers us to do more and encourages people around us to do something. But yeah, it was just the way that some of this came up with the questioning for today, is that this sense that we have to wait, and I know I'm guilty of it too, right? Is I go, who am I to make a difference? Can I be somebody that can make a difference in certain areas? Am I the right person? And we wait for that kind of perfection before we do anything. And so I guess part of my intention with raising that right away is to call everybody in this group. I mean, we're here. Like if we've talked about on every prior call, right? We're here because we want to make a difference. So this is where whatever we can do, no matter, there's nothing too small at this point. And when I look at, yeah, I'm emotional today. I'll admit, like, I know, right? Like,
Oh my.
yeah, right. Like this is weighing on me. The stuff that's going on, all in the past couple of days, just whoosh, right? That we're aware
So let
of.
me just say this quickly. It's all in the last couple of days that I think it's being unveiled for many.
Right.
So it's hitting you differently. And I am honored and happy that it's hitting. And I say honored because that means something is happening in the process of people just
Right.
stop. For those that are brown or black, this is a constant, unfortunate. There's so many other names that we can't call. I was on a call earlier that, Twitter only allows 30 hashtags. We have surpassed the 30 names. So we don't move forward, Nancy, without you. We don't move forward without you, Ernie. We don't move forward without each other to hold leadership accountable and accountable. And Kim and I had this conversation earlier. So Kim, I'm just still a piece of your thing and I'll let you speak. Accountability comes from yourself first. Do I need to be accountable for this? I need to be accountable for this because I'm living in this. So the office from the Central Park incident, and we have so many Central Park incidents, we want to start from the latest one with the dog. I'll just say that one. What she didn't know, what she didn't think was that there was a privilege for which she had. Let's not speak race at the second. She had a privilege to figure that her dog could go where the dog wanted to go. So she had a privilege of animal. Then it was a privilege of race and being and all those other things that came into it. What she didn't expect was for her company, whether she signed a NDA or a moral clause, to say, not here. So I applaud that company for the simple fact I've never really seen a company move that quickly for a decision. And you're suspended, and the suspension was you're suspended. And within a few hours later, it was, no, thank you. We thank you for your service. You were done. So that was, here was the reaction. We did that, and legally, we're going to finish everything else we need to do on the back end. That's how I'm interpreting. I wasn't in that room. But I kept thinking about that leadership and going, wow, look at the move. Something is slowly creeping in. But yet we have others that are slowly dismantling things. Every time you read news, there's another chapter 11 of a company and employees are being left, and how are they being told? Yes.
So yeah, I have a question in regards to that, or a comment more likely. When you're talking about like leadership moving in as quick as they did, and I put air quotes up there to say as quick as they did, do you think it was more of, hey, this is a moral thing and the moral right thing to do is to step in and fire her? Or do you think it was more of, wow, this is really massive backlash that we're going to get and it's going to mess up our money. So we need to do something, immediately. Because I'm kind of conflicted on, giving Franklin Templeton, a hero cookie for doing what they did.
I didn't say hero cookie.
Okay. Well,
I said respect for moving quickly.
Okay. Well, yeah, it still comes back to the crux of the question. Do you think it was more of, and I'm just want to know your opinion, do you think it was more of like, hey, this is the morally right thing to do and we're advancing as a society? Or this is more of like, wow, there's a lot of backlash because, that was Memorial Day weekend. And by nighttime, it had probably 8 million views on it. So
I'll put my PR hat on for a second. I'll tip it over here before I put my diversity inclusion whole bodysuit on. The PR answer to that question is somebody was smart enough to say, this is not going to fare well for us. Someone was smart enough to say, we need to get in front of this now. They did not have to. It was Memorial Day weekend, and that's why I give them credit. Somebody could have, now maybe we were all off picnicking and canoeing and all that other stuff, and would have waited till Monday. But most likely, someone said, we are in a different time and we need to get in front of this. And they got in front of it by the suspension. We're doing something. And then it had that night exploded to the point of, we've caught this. Now let's let it go elsewhere. But I still have to, most companies that do that don't move that quick. Let's go back. Now, since we have all these incidents right now, unfortunately, in the last 48 hours to discuss on leadership. The police were fired, all 4 of them. They have not been put up on charges as of yet. But yet, shocking, shouldn't be shocking. We're in 2020. There should be nothing shocking about this, but that they were held accountable at that moment. But a man's life was taken. So why should I feel shocked that they were held accountable? But someone in leadership was, again, had enough sense to go, this is not going to fare well. And it's not going to fare well. There's zero excuse, there's zero thing. But to watch, was it the mayor? And someone, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, step out and call the police on it and said, the report you turned in was incorrect and I won't accept it. When's the last time you've seen that? So as frustrating as all of this is, there are leadership that at least understand that they have to make a move when there's injustice. But there's so many that aren't. Yes, so go for it.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that I agree with you, and particularly around leadership, it is easier when they do the right, and I'm putting air quote because right thing is so relative, right? But it's easier when they think about their community, when they think about the humanity of people, et cetera, when they think strategically, right? All of these different things. However, the group, the collective, now whether this be, in society or in a job or position, could organize to hold the leadership together. And now it's harder when you do community organization, because if you have less power, then you're needing to get a larger group together to make enough noise, right? And also you have to have the resilience to make the noise long enough, right? So I think that leadership does give you more power, but if you're not in a position of high leadership, it does not necessarily make you powerless. And I do think that the group does need to hold the leader accountable, as well as vice versa. Otherwise, the power can be taken advantage of.
Absolutely. I agree. And most of you are probably going to be too young for this, so I will date myself at this moment. But let's just say Norma Ray. Anybody know the movie of Norma Ray? Kim, because you're my age, because the rest of them did not shake their heads, but I'm okay with that. I'm securing my ageism right now. Well, Norma Ray, if you get a chance, Norma Ray, seriously, worked at a meat factory. It was a mess. She stood up. She did it by herself. She was getting radioactive. She was getting brushed down. She was getting death threats. A fire was going on. They were catching a house on fire. All those things. But Norma Ray stayed tight. And she was pretty much by herself through the majority of it, because everyone was terrified of retribution. So one person can make a difference, because she changed it, and it changed the way the entire factory systems work now. So you have, yes, it is hard to be a lone wolf. So your community, I always say, who's the person that thinks like you that's not even in your circle? So we get stuck sometime when we're trying to deal with leadership to keep it in the circle. Who's out on the playground that thinks about you, that that said hello, that asked you about something? That's someone you go have a conversation in, and that's how you begin to form a coalition to speak to, deal with leadership. I'm trying to see if she's on. I don't see that she's on. But I received a call this morning, earlier this morning, about something that a leadership was doing. And it basically said, I don't even know how to approach this because as personally, this is bothering my moral compass. And I don't understand why leadership doesn't have a moral compass. But so that's where it goes to. Are we expecting more from leaders than what we're getting? Should we not be expecting as much? I honestly think if you take the role, and as Nancy said, shaking her head, if you take the role, there's a responsibility with that role. Leadership is not just a title, it is action. So if you decide you want the nice corner office that doesn't happen anymore, or you want a nice new living room sofa, because that's where people may be working from coming forward, and you want to call the shots, then you need to not only call the shots, but not be liked. One of the things I always say, it's okay not to be liked. You're making a decision for the betterment of the whole. And that whole is sometimes the bottom line, but you don't have a bottom line if you don't have people working. So at what point, though, do we say, okay, you're my leader, so you can speak to me anywhere you want to speak to me? Personally, not on my watch. Because again, you have to still earn the respect of that title of leader. I will give you the respect of being, okay, you're the leader. But if you don't show me the same respect, there's going to be an issue. And I personally have no problem with saying, this is not going to work.
I think just to add to that as well, I think that, when we're talking about leaders and leadership, there needs to be a more structured process to ascend to those titles and heights and everything, and that are particularly the responsibility that comes with it. And what I mean by that is that, and just using like some of the police departments that are around here as well. I mean, you have someone that they simply take a test for sergeant or take a test for a detective and have the requisite college credits to be promoted, and then they're automatically in a title position to be able to manage other people when they haven't gone through any courses about how to effectively lead. They haven't gone through any diversity courses associated with dealing with diverse people and diverse situations. And so when you're thrust somebody into these leadership positions, we're putting a lot of power within these people to be able to do that. So yeah, that's just one comment.
No, I agree. Look, for some leaders, they're thrust into the position. Okay, still zero excuse. Like, sorry is no longer good enough for I didn't know. Share with me you don't know, and we can work it out. We can figure it out. I'm happy to suggest someone that may be able to help. But leadership is also being able to say when you don't know and ask for the help and take the help, and then allow the person that you've asked the help from to actually do what you don't know. Because we are quick. It's the same thing when you're hiring consultants. Oh, I want you to come in and I want you to handle all of that. And that's usually through leadership. And you can run it until you have to say, okay, how about here are the steps that I would like to do. Ooh, wow. I didn't know I was going to have to work at that. What did you think was going to happen? I'd rather, right. I'd rather you, can we rearrange that? I'm like, you mean the order of that? Because all of this still needs to happen. So there's times where I go in and I think I become the cheerleader for leadership, because I've come to find out some don't want to make that decision. They are concerned about what it will look like. And I'm like, I want you to think about what it won't look like. I want you to think about what you will need to deal with. Because as much as you brush it under the rug and push it, at some point it's going to come back up. So you can deal with it now, or you can deal with it later, but you will have to deal with it as long as you stay within this role. And I had a CEO say to me, I was doing a CEO leadership training, and I said, sometimes you have to look at your staff and make sure you're not trying to put a square peg into a circle. And he raised his hand. He goes, do you think that's for leadership as well? And I was like, absolutely. Maybe you're not in the right spot either. And that's hard for someone to take sometimes, because with leadership comes what? Power. And people like power. If it's nothing else to say, I have the credit card to order the donuts and the wine tomorrow. So any other thoughts on leadership and the communication, and what do you expect from leadership? I'd love to hear from some of you. Or what type of leaders are you? No one? Come on now. I know all of you in here, number one, you're all leaders within yourself. So yes.
I believe that depending upon the need of a society or organization or company, there's a different type of leader required, right? So I don't think that, and if you are a great leader for that circumstance, does not necessarily mean you're a great leader after. And then as a good leader, you might step down when you're not. That hardly happens, but
unfortunately true.
Right. But I do also agree that regardless of what is needed, there are some fundamental emotional intelligence skills that need to happen. So things like, how do you model and also like, how do you model working or dealing with conflict is a good example that needs to happen across the board, right? So it's difficult to talk about what do I expect of a leader without knowing like the circumstance in there. But I will say that people skills do need to happen. And even if that's intentionally saying, well, I'm going to come in and not be liked today, that's still self-awareness, right? Right. Sure. Because sometimes as a leader, you're not, first off, as a leader, you're not going to be liked by everybody. That's just, you have to accept that. You're going to always make someone unhappy. However, sometimes you do need to do what needs to be done, and they may not understand at the time. So I don't.
Communication has to be one of those skills.
Right, that's correct. That's correct, right? Like you can't just decide on your own and then do a drastic move, and tell people through email, right? Like there are some. There are some things that have to happen across the board. So I expect communication. I expect a leader that looks at that calculates or thinks about the growth of whatever they're leading, along with the people in there, right? And sometimes you have to weigh those balances. I expect someone that does handle conflict well. I expect someone with self-awareness and self-reflection, right? So there are those common emotional intelligence skills that I do expect. But outside of
something, sorry, yeah, I teach something. What's in your bag for a leader? What do you bring to the table?
You asking that or asking that question?
That's exactly what the question I asked them, and it is a exercise that I do. What is in your bag? Because what's in your bag from your belly up, and we carry a lot of bags. So some of them you put down, some of them you bring in. Like you said, be aware that today's not a great day. I wouldn't come to my door if I was you. Hold that thought. I want to answer you, and I'm in a different mind frame. Being able to say that, that's power to me. That's also privilege, because someone that is lower may not be able to say that. So that's why when we say power and privilege or power, it's all how it's used. But what are you bringing? Do you have empathy? Do you understand that I would like to know your plan so that I can execute your plan in my fullest being? But everyone doesn't think that way. I do expect you to, as a leader, here are the things that I expect. I expect you to have respect for those around you. I expect for you to communicate. I expect for you to have diversity of thought. And I expect for you to show up and be present. I don't think that's asking a lot. And when I say be present in the moment for which we're in. Be aware of what's happening around you. Be present enough to know that you know what you know and you don't know what you know. Be present enough to see someone else shining and to be able to say it and know that it doesn't reflect from you. So, Kim, do you mind sharing your I love what you said about being your own leader first, walking in the door. You have to unmute yourself though.
Oh, sorry about that. Hello, everyone. Leslie and I were sharing this morning, and I said to her, one of the things that this whole leadership subject, it brought me to the point of even saying to myself, what type of leader am I? And also, am I accountable to myself? I have to become more aware of who I am in order to, I can't look to somebody else to make them accountable for my stuff. I have to be accountable as a leader also. Being an example. I'll tell you this. I had privilege when I worked at two other companies. The last company that I worked with, there was a power struggle. And that was something that I was not used to. The people that I had worked with previously, I had gotten spoiled because, I had kind of like full reign. This time I had to actually pull back and I had to actually ask people for different things. And that was like something that I had to get used to. But it made me stronger in some of my leadership skills because I had to make certain decisions that they necessarily didn't know about, but it benefited the company. I think the other thing is always knowing who you are, because a lot of times if we don't know who we are, we will give our power away. And that's a lot of times where the deficit comes in, where people are speaking to you in a certain way. Even where I worked, I had not been used to the person who was the chairperson. He was excellent with the clients. His relationship internally, my judgment, was horrible. He yelled at people in front of the whole company. He would, say things in like he even spoke to one of the women and told her, I didn't hear it personally, that her womb was making decisions for her. Yes. He also told one of the women in a full meeting, it was only two of them, but she was an executive, and he said to her, "What the fuck are you doing?" In the middle of a meeting. So that was something that I could not get used to. I would limit my conversations with him because I did not like his energy, but it made me a stronger leader in who I was because I knew what I was going to take from him and what I wasn't going to take from him. So I think it always comes back to us making ourselves, first of all, accountable, making ourselves of our own leadership skills in which we have, so that we are an example to other people too. Because some people are in leadership positions, and I know Micah touched on this, they don't have the leadership skills and they're not open to actually professionally develop. Now, I admit, when I worked at the two other companies, they poured a lot of money into their executives. They had all of them go to a Columbia University professional studies, like whether they had a degree or not. They mandated them to go to Columbia University, and they put the time and the money into them. Not every company can do that, But I think, like you said, Leslie, also is an awareness where we also, I'm a little shaky on this. I'm a little shaky on my communication skills. I'm not an emotional person. You know, it's like you got to realize you don't wear your emotions on your sleeve, but you also can show some empathy for your people. That's kind of
And
like,
everyone doesn't have empathy. And you know how I feel sometimes about we can all study everything, right? And still not be good at it. Everything's not our calling, and so you have to know that as well, no matter how much someone pours into you. And I'm not going to be a tap dancer. Now I can do ballet, but I can't tap. I definitely can't sing, and Lord knows they sent me to enough singing coaches. Still not going to happen. So sometimes you have to go, you know what? This part's not for me. Brian, I know you want to share something.
I was actually going to talk about empathy because I think that, I've had the benefit of working with people whose specialty was sort of empathy. And as a leader, I think that especially now in this time, because even though we're sort of settling into this, oh, this is our new normal and we're doing Zoom calls and stuff, we're all still under an incredible amount of stress. And, I'm the chair of a board here in Silicon Valley. And yesterday, one of the board members just flipped out, like freaked out, started screaming at me, and then just like disconnected from Zoom. And the rest of us are all just kind of like, okay. And I'll be honest, I was pissed. I mean, you know me, Leslie. I try and control my temper, but it doesn't always work. But it was, but it was really like I took a minute, and I was just like, but it was like I stopped to take a moment to really just like, okay, well, this is like, this is it's 95 degrees out. We're all trapped in our homes without air conditioning, and we're, it's a stressful time. And so being able to like step back for a moment and to do that, and I think that that's important no matter what we're doing, because as we move forward into this new, whatever the new world is going to look like after this, we have to be able to have empathy for what other things, and that I think is one of the keys to leadership right now. And whether and using, I'm very fortunate and I have a great deal of privilege, and to be able to accept that and recognize that, and how do I turn that into, okay, how do I have empathy for people that aren't in the same situations as I am, whether that's I'm alone in my home. I can be talking to about a 60-year-old white man who's alone in his home. Well, that's my life is better than that right now, And so how do I have empathy for that? And how do I understand that people are under a different reality than I am right now?
And not that I need to share with this group that's listening, but empathy is understanding that someone else doesn't have what you have, that someone else is not in the same place that you have, and not feeling sorry for them, but being able to recognize it and wanting to, if possible, help change it, be aware of it, recognize it. Because I think empathy gets lost with so many other words. Like you can't fix it. To have empathy doesn't mean you need to fix it. It means you need to be aware of it. And I'm going to shout out Brian, because when he says he's worked for people that have empathy, I need to say that he's worked for the Dalai Lama and for Desmond.
Okay.
So, and that's how we met. So he really understands the empathy. That's who he's worked for. So it is a different bird now to come back from that to, I'm going to say, the real world of people that don't understand what empathy is. And we can't assume that everyone has it. And that's the biggest thing, that we just can't assume that every leader, every person has empathy. There are people with what's happened in the last couple of days have posted saying, could care less, one less black man. I put it nicely. One less this, one less that. Who cares? Get rid of them. Nessa, you go ahead and say what you wrote. I love that.
Yeah, I heard in college once that I think it was like during some RA training to be a leader is to serve. And that, I don't know, it just always stuck with me because leadership feels like this big thing when you're new to it. But once you can just simplify it into something like that and consider like every action that you do based on that one, fundamental idea, then I don't know. I just don't think it should be this difficult. I don't understand how how people could end up in these positions doing what they're doing. But anyway, there are good leaders, there are bad leaders, so that's just my 2 cents.
That's great. And then it's, how do you get caught up? We all know that there were some really good people that started out as great managers, great directors. They hit a certain level, and maybe they shouldn't have been at that level, even though they've worked hard. And not you don't want to begrudge them to say they didn't earn it, but earning it and succeeding at it is really different places, and we need to understand that. So I'm going to go back to the question again: are we expecting too much from leaders? I'm still say no. Do we allow leaders to speak to us any way we want? I'm going to go back to Kim. No. You have to be your own leader, as we have to be our own advocates a lot of the time. And that's regardless of who you are. And I think that there are different levels of advocacy, but if you don't speak up for what you will and won't accept, whether it's a job or if it's from a leader or if it's within a relationship or whatever that is, it all comes back to what's in your bag. So what are you bringing in? I will sometimes, and I think I've said this before, when I'm being evaluated to be on a board and everyone's like, oh, well, Leslie, what do you bring? I now look at them and say, well, what's your added value to me? Because clearly, I think you probably need me a little bit more than I need you right now. So what's the added value that we bring? And it's horrible to feel like I feel like we're tagging things. You give me this, I give you that, we're tagged this, I have empathy, you have this. But at the end of the day, we do hold a responsibility to each other. You have a responsibility as a leader and to share with me, and I have the responsibility to help you execute and to lead to whatever I'm doing. But when that line is broken and when it is crossed and you see it clearly on a consistent basis of the bad group of leaders, like someone said, then at that point, I think it may be time for you to separate yourself from that situation.
Hey, I just have one question for you, or comment associated with it as well. I think going back to what you're saying about like people going up and deserving to be leaders, I guess you could say. I think what happens being promoted to it. I think the power corrupts people. Since the beginning of time, like just the feeling of power kind of corrupts the soul, something within other people to act a certain way. And so I guess the question or comment I would have is that how do we replace that? Like, how do we get from that? For example, I'm just use a police force, for example. You got a guy that's been, 20 years on the job. He finally gets promoted to like captain, and all the struggles that he's went through. And what I mean by struggles, all the fights that he had to do to get there. How do you keep that person from being corrupt once they make it to the plateau of captain or whatever it is, or sheriff or whatever it is that in plateau it is? How do you kind of protect that journey of that person up there so they're not corrupted once they finally make it to the top?
What's in your bag? If you were corrupt at the top, you were somewhere already. It was in your spirit. I know Serena has a comment, and I'm gonna let her make that comment, and I'll come back to that. Go ahead, Serena.
Yeah, so for me, one big thing that I find important is that you just need to do your own personal work. So, for example, if you have an ego or some real insecurities, that's going to show up when it's triggered in your relationships, in your leadership skills. I mean, everything you do, you are just going to bleed that out, right? Especially if you're not aware of it. And so a lot of times when you have interactions, it's normally people, either interacting some like childhood trauma or whatever it is, and they're not even aware of it, right? And so the best thing that you can do as an individual in this society is get yourself together. Because if you don't, in the best circumstance, you're going to really inconvenience somebody. And in the worst, you're going to really hurt somebody. Take someone's life or whatever it is in the most extreme case. And so that's kind of like my response there. That to avoid corruption, there's something in you that something's feeding your power, right? Like you just have a big ego that you need to be corrupt, or you know what I mean? Like there's something going on in you that's doing that.
And the system changes sometimes when you hit a certain level.
Right.
And that means you have to decide whether you're going to stick within that system or not. And that goes back to check yourself, know yourself, what's in your bag, do your work, all those other things. It's all part of that. Brian, I know you wanted to add on as well.
Yeah, I don't 100% agree that power is corrupting. I think that what it really does, to go with your bag analogy, is it really reveals what's in your bag. So people, I'm working right now with a woman in Liberia who's a Nobel laureate, and she was homeless. She fought to end the civil war there, and then she won the Nobel Prize, and suddenly she had a lot of power, a lot of privilege, a lot of wealth, and what she's done with it is amazing. It's because that's what was in her soul already. And I think that good leaders, when they achieve a certain level of power, they're not threatened by other people. They're lifting other people up, being able to take everybody up with that wave is beneficial for them as well. I mean, to go with that, there was a comment about the mutually beneficial partnership. Well, if I'm helping other people to be successful, that makes me look great, in that way, and ultimately it leads to all of our success. So I think that I know nothing about police. I know very little about law enforcement and how that world works, and it might be completely different. But I think overall, that I don't necessarily agree with the generalization that power is corrupting, because I think that really I've seen some of the most amazing things happen once people are able to achieve a level of power.
Agreed. So, and it goes back to the individual. And yes, there are certain systems in place that unless you work inside, you will never know what that looks like. You can only go by the movies, unless you have someone on the side of where it turns, because there are places where it turns. We can go through the Wall Street, we can go through the police, we can go through many things where, I'm gonna call it what it is. We can go through the event industry, as easy as that is. There are companies that want you to constantly call them, and they will slide you money on the side, and they will say, this is for you, this is not for your client. And I'm supposed to take $100 away from my client. Can I have the other light that goes behind that? Because that's gonna make my stuff prettier. Like what am I doing for $100 or a couple $1,000 or any of those other things? It really comes down to, where is your line, and how far are you prepared to push your line? And that determines what type of leader you are. Or you may not be that leader yet, but trying to get there, so you'll push the line or pull the toe. And then once you get there, you can't go back. You use those folks to help you get there. So, Brian, to your thought process, who's around you as you're moving, and who do you bring to the top and surround yourself with once you're there to really make an impact? But that has to be your mission of making that impact one day when I get there. Look at politics. As much as there's times I want to run because I really want to make a difference on a bigger platform, and I say, can I run? And then I have these meetings sometimes, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to fight somebody. I don't know if this is maybe the best option for me right now. Because I'm like, that makes zero sense to me. But yet everyone goes, well, that's exactly why you should run. And I go, maybe not now. So you also have to know where you're going. We can't be so fast to climb a ladder of leadership and then get there and be shocked at what you have to deal with. Because then you weren't prepared to begin with. You were looking for a title and a position and power and privilege, but you were not looking to lead, and you weren't looking to follow, and you were looking to share. Are there any other thoughts or comments? We have a few moments left. I love this group. Thank you so much. Yes, A. Lewis, that hides from me. Feel free.
Put it on mute. Hi, so this is actually Dr. Al. This is A. Lewis's mother.
Hello.
I'm sharing her computer today. I just wanted to comment, you say what's in your bag. I don't think power itself corrupts people. It's more or less who you are. I can recall years ago, I was on a job and they wanted to promote me to supervisor. So I had like a mentor supervisor who was telling me the ropes and all. And so I thought about it and I came in and I declined it. And they're like, what? Are you sure? And so, of course, I was like, okay, think about the cost. I said, when I go home and I look in the mirror, I have to be able to face myself. And I say, based on what you've shared with me, what you do, that's not me. I can't do it. And so they say, are you sure? Think about it. And I say, I did. And it's not me. You mentioned regarding running for politics. I did run for office several times. And at the end, the last time I said, you know what? I'm okay. I may have lost but I came out with my integrity and everything. Because even once I did the sworn statement and I was coming out of the office from having, sworn in and all like this, you're going to abide by the rules and all. I was approached by one of the workers that worked there and said, let me help you do this. And I said, no, that's against the law. So she said, well, everybody does it. I say, but I don't have to give an account for everybody. I just have to give an account for me. So if I win, I will win honestly. If I don't, then it wasn't meant to be. I say, because the reason I'm running is to make a difference. And so given I did naively run because I thought if you had a good platform, a good message, and you were out there to help the people, that people would vote for you. So like I say, I was naive, but I would never regret having done that. And then also in a relationship, I was like, okay, if I make it up in this company, please. And I told my best friend at the time, I say, if I start acting like some of these other people and doing some of this, I say, as my friend, you have got to be honest with me to let me know. She say, I won't have to do that. She say, because it's not in you to do that, because you don't treat people like that. And so to me, that was a compliment. So I feel as though the life that you live is your testimony. You know, I can talk about it all day long, but then the people that know you and know you best, they know what your inner workings are. And so even
Absolutely.
now in going into a leadership position, I am who I am, and I'm willing to stand by myself because I know it's my integrity that's at stake, my inner, my personal, and my faith that's going to keep me going. So if I'm standing there, and I've stood plenty of times on my own, the only person standing in the corner, but I also have had people come to me afterwards, after I've spoken, and they say, "Oh, I'm so glad you said that. I felt that way too, or I was afraid to say anything." And I was like, okay, man doesn't have a heaven or hell to put me in, so I don't fear man or what they can do. And so therefore I'm willing to stand. If I'm standing on one toe by myself, I'm okay with it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That is true. So I think this is what we've wrapped up this evening with. You are who you are. What you come in with is what you travel with. We will gain skills, we will gain opportunity, we will gain power, and we will gain privilege. But how you decide to use them will determine what type of leader you will be. Within that, we need empathy and we need understanding, but we can't expect it from everyone. Did I capture that? So I just want to say thank you to everyone again for joining. Next week's topic, the bias within, kneeling, walking, and working while bias. Let's have a open and honest town hall conversation on not only what's happening, but ways that each of us can help each other to move it forward. So I look forward to seeing you all next week as always. And thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Miss Kim.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you. Oh, thanks, Ari.